Horizon program and the AIMS program.
Go ahead, ladies.
It worked before. There we go. So we are looking at specialized programs that these are specialized autism programs that exist in some and not all districts and schools. These are specialized programs that have a different level of support. These are programs that have pre-service training. They have teachers that understand how to support a student with autism, but also these programs are not expected to be in every school. So there's students with autism are often in program schools. Their students with autism can be in all types of settings. They can be in small classes, they can be in general education, they can be in ICT, as well as in other places within New York City public schools. And again, we're looking to help build understanding about the autism program, specifically Nest Horizon and AIMS. Again, we're going to recognize that some students with autism are going to benefit from a specialized approach to their education, meaning that they are going to be well supported in either the Nest Horizon or AIMS program. Again, special education supports that do not currently exist in every district, that we are going to consider them the specialized programs. So we have these programs, they are part of the specialized programs team, and we then support those schools in our program schools. So what makes a specialized program a specialized program? There are foundational pillars that we look at with all specialized programs. And the first one comes around that training and professional development. I think that this is the cornerstone to lifelong learning. In our programs, we have pre-service and ongoing professional development for all staff working within a Nest Horizon or AIMS program. This professional development does not end just with the team, the Nest team, the Horizon team, the AIMS team. It also extends to many of the folks working in the building, meaning lunch aides, people that are helping with our students in transitions, times to like in the cafeteria, our cafeteria ladies. We really are excited about that. We want folks to understand how to support autism, but also recognize what supports might need to be in place. Again, we have direct and in-classroom consultation. So from the Nest Horizon and AIMS program, there is direct coaching that goes on within the program schools. We want to make sure that we're doing that. And again, when our students are in out of classroom experiences, like meaning that they're at lunch or recess or at art or gym, or they're transitioning to the bus, there's always somebody who is trained with them to help support. So that autism support extends beyond the classroom. And we understand that our students often need to have that level of support that continues throughout their day. If we're going to move on to another pillar of our programs is the collaborative structures. Each one of our schools has a team. We think about that collaboration. And when we can call a team, it means that there's not just one or two folks on that team. So in our programs, the teacher, the paraprofessional, the speech language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the guidance counselor and social worker, the administrator and cluster teachers are all people who are part of our team within that program school. So meaning that they're either a Nest team, a Horizon team, or an AIMS team. Again, we're going to have interdisciplinary meetings because what we look at is, and we recognize, is then when we have the team meet together to talk about children, they are talking about things that the child can do well. They are also going to figure out what might be difficult for that child, meaning what kind of support do they need? And having that lens of a speech pathologist and an occupational therapist or a guidance counselor or social worker, they are going to then bring a robust ability to support that child within that multidisciplinary team meeting. We have transition support. We think about this, as our children are in programs, we want to make sure that the supports of the program carry and continue with them so that when they move from kindergarten to first grade, we want our teams to have transition meetings. We support that. It's part of our programs. The things that we look at are if supports were developed in kindergarten, we would like to have them continue for first grade. And we would have the same when we have children leaving elementary school. Their transition to middle school would also be supported, as well as high school, from middle school to high school. So that is another one of our transitional supports within our collaborative structure that is really important. We also have regular meetings with the administrators of our building. So the central autism team meets regularly with the principals that have the programs, more about understanding what supports that they need. We talk about how program is running with fidelity, ways that we can help to support professional development, or also how do we have parent engagement. All of those things are part of the things that we look at when we have this regular collaboration with the central autism team and a program school's principal and administration. It's really important. My most important and most favorite one of these is really the homeschool connection. We are looking at any of our families coming into our programs as partners. We look at this as the respect from our teams needs to be for the families. We want them in partnership. We want to understand what your child needs. All of the parents here are experts on your children. We want our teams to be collaborating with you. We want them to be talking to you. We want regular and consistent communication. So understanding that we have people on our team that are going to be reaching out, not just the teacher. It should be the speech pathologist, the occupational therapist, the guidance counselor, social worker. All of those folks should be having regular communication. It's encouraged. We want to understand what is going well at home and are there things that might need some support. In my experiences, I've had students that had a difficult time getting ready to go on the bus, and we were able to develop a simple checklist that child knew all of the things that needed to get done before they could get their iPad while waiting for the bus. So it was one of those things that because we had communication with the family, we were able to then provide a support that would carry over many of the things we were doing in school. So again, we also have home visits within our programs, which is really an important portion where we look and have our team members. So 2 team members go to visit a family in their home before they come into the program. It's usually before or right as the child is coming in. Part of what we want to do is build that connection. And I think the piece that we look at is understanding what a child, what is the family dynamic. It's not evaluative. This is really about understanding how we can best support. Those are wonderful things. We're also going to think about creating that neurodiversity affirming and welcoming atmosphere as communities, as our families come into programs, but also continue. We really want to respect the family voice. That is something that we think about always, is how our families are experiencing the program. We get feedback, and we are also use that as an area where we can help to support. Okay, the last piece that we look at here is the individualized supports. So we are looking at, as a child coming into one of our programs, is that there is going to be class-wide supports, and then there are going to be some individualized supports. And then we're looking at our students who might require an individualized support. Might be, I need to have a checklist. I might need to have it repeated. I might need to see it a different way. I might have to have my work truncated. Like I get a little piece of it. Like I don't get 20 questions, I get 3 questions and then a break. So we're looking at that individualized support. We have high expectations in our programs. We, in the Nest and Horizon programs, our students progress through the programs. They move from elementary to middle and from middle to high school. And our students in Nest and Horizon are graduating at a 97% graduation rate with a Regents diploma in 4 years. So it's higher than the average for students with IEPs. So it's one thing that we're really proud of, but also, I love that. Good. But also it's that presumption of competency. So I am a speech language pathologist by training. Like we're thinking our children, we are knowing that they can do things. Like we're not saying they can't do something. So if a child is non-speaking, and we think about that, is that they're just right now not speaking. It does not mean that they don't have things that they want to communicate and that they have things that they understand and want to get their points across. So I think that that's a really important thing. So we're presuming competency, making sure that we're all thinking from that, what can a child do, as opposed to understanding what they can't do, coming from that strengths-based place. And we're going to also create a sense of belonging. Students with autism desperately want to have friends and they want to be part of the community. And sometimes we need to have a little bit of accommodations for that. We might need to practice going into the large auditorium. We might have to have some supports that are there, like maybe some headphones, or we're thinking about how we can get ready to go into those places. So our teams are always looking at that. We're also thinking about this inclusive mindset that our children belong in our schools, and that you're in the National Horizon program or Ames program does not mean that you are not a student first and foremost of PS 123, if that's the program, or middle school 202. These are things, and those are not schools that we have. So also thinking about that ableism, coming from using the language that's really important, understanding that we are looking to help support our families and our children to have the best outcomes that they can possibly have. Okay, let's go on. So we're going to go over today the 3 programs in depth. There's lots of questions, I'm sure. We have lots of families are asking questions specifically about kindergarten, because we are right now in the kindergarten IEP process, which is the KIP process. For those families that have kindergarten students, you're going to have very specific questions. And then we have students that apply to the programs as they're older. So we might have students that are applying for middle school or for high school or for later in elementary. So there's lots of different nuances. But Molly and I are going to go through this now and really talk in depth about our programs. So what is autism? Autism is a neurodevelopmental disability that primarily hinders communication at times. So those are things that we often see is communication is an area of difference for our children. It doesn't mean it's less. They are communicating differently. And we think about the research that we're seeing with students with autism. It is really about their differences in communication, understanding verbal communication and that nonverbal communication. Understanding facial expressions would be part of that nonverbal communication. Like understanding people's body language. When somebody raises their eyebrows, that means something. Many of our students with autism, that is an area of challenge or difference for them. They don't see it. So we need to build in those supports so that they can also recognize that. Also, that's social. Thinking about our students with autism, we want to make sure that their social interactions are supported when needed. A lot of it can be about perspective taking and having difficulty sharing ideas. If everybody loves the trains, great, but not everybody loves the trains. And maybe we want to talk about something different. So those social interactions are things that we work on, but we also think about this in a really, really interesting way. And we want to make sure that we're hearing and supporting the way it should be. We're going to talk about those unique abilities, the special interest in our programs. We talk about what our children are interested in, those things that motivate them. So your special interest is either whatever that is. It can be very unique to your child. There's also pieces of children in that they are able to do things that are remarkable. Some of them have amazing memories or can do mental math. So there's lots of things that we see where there might be differences in functioning, but we also want to make sure and recognize that there are things that we might be missing. So if we come from that strengths-based thought process, we're always going to be thinking about things that our children can do as opposed to things that they can't do. Again, you're all families here supporting autistic children. I don't need to tell you about autism. The portion of it is that we want to help to support our children. And coming into one of our programs can be really impactful. Okay, so there's students with autism all over New York City Public Schools. We have kids that are in general education. We have children who are in integrated co-teaching classrooms. We have students that are in small classes. We have students that have not yet been diagnosed or classified. We also have students that are in District 75. And then what we recognize is that some of these students would benefit from a highly specialized program that has a foundation. District 75 is citywide programs where students who have maybe more need would be going to a school that might have accommodations for it, like in terms of like mobility or thinking about like students who might be in wheelchairs. We are looking for inclusiveness in all New York City public schools, but some schools need to be available because they have an elevator or they have a ramp. Those are things that we look at. And District 75 is a more specialized program to help support some students. Okay, that's a great question. We have 3 specialized autism programs, and the first one is the NEST program, which is an integrated co-teaching classroom that has a smaller class size. Then we have the Horizon program, which is a special class. So it's a small class in a community school. So meaning it's in a local elementary school And there's 8 students in that classroom. And then we have the AIMS program, which is our newest program that is a special class with 6 students that are in some District 75 and community schools, so in Districts 132. So we're really excited about this. The AIMS program is very impactful, and Molly's going to talk a lot about that in a little bit. But let's move it right along into very high level pieces that we're looking at within the AIMS, the Nest Horizon and AIMS program. So this again is our big piece, like where we're looking at our high level overview. So the Nest program is from kindergarten to 12th grade. Students can apply to the programs anywhere during that, anytime in their career. Lots of our kids come in during kindergarten. That's when we have the ability to place children closest to home, also to having them start with the right level of support. So is anybody here going through the kindergarten IEP process? Okay. Okay, so he's born in 2021? Okay, so you're in the KIP process. So you are a kindergarten IEP, you're going to be working this year, so that's great. Okay, how old is your child? 14, great. So we'll talk about how we apply when we're older, for older students, great. Okay, so we're looking at the reduced class sizes. So in the NEST program, we have 2 teachers, a special education teacher and a general education teacher. These are both teachers that work collaboratively together to help support our students. Both teachers, the special ed and the general education teachers, are both trained to help support and implement the NEST supports. It's really important that we look at that as that both teachers are fluent and are using those supports every day. So it's not just one teacher implementing the supports, it's both. Good. Then we look at, we have related service providers that within our programs. We're looking at students that might have speech and OT, thinking about that team. That is going to be a theme you're going to see through all of our programs, but in particular, we're going to look at what we're looking at in the NEST program. So when kids come into the NEST program, they're getting, for instance, the curriculum that's at kindergarten. So what goes on in the NEST classroom for kindergarten is happening in the general education classroom, as well as all of the other classes on that grade level. So they're getting the academics at grade level, just in a different kind of a classroom. That's one that's set up to support autistic learners. So I think that's really important. The other cornerstone of this program is social development intervention, and that is a speech mandate that's given to students in the NEST program, where they're working specifically on social. And what we sometimes, a fancy word for that is called pragmatics. When we talk about social, we know how that is. How do we share space together? How do we have a conversation? How do we take turns? All of those things that we look at can be areas of difference or challenges for our kids. And we think about this. So in the NEST program, social development intervention, or SDI, is a programmatic function of the program that continues from kindergarten to 12th grade. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Again, we have parent counseling and training. We look at this as being partnerships between our families and our schools. We want to make sure our parents are getting the support that they need. The day does end at 2:20 or 2:30, but we also want to make sure that our parents are getting that support and that community. Having a community and having folks that are in the same program or students that are in the same classroom, we want to build that community between our families and the schools, but also between the families together themselves. In the programs, we have students that graduate with a 97% graduation rate in 4 years. So that is a really important fact for both programs. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And that's above the citywide average. So really important information there. The Horizon program, which is in the middle, is a program that's from grades kindergarten to 12th grade. So families can apply to the programs at any point. Our major articulation, or a major time when kids come into the program, is in kindergarten. Does not mean that you can't come into a program later on. We just have the best ability to place a child when they're coming through that kindergarten process, okay? So this is a special class. There's 8 students in the classroom that have an autism classification, and they are in that classroom with a special education teacher and a programmatic paraprofessional. So it's 8 students, 1 special ed teacher, and one paraprofessional. Again, we're thinking about the curriculum in this classroom. This is a classroom that uses the grade level curriculum. So if you're in kindergarten in a Horizon classroom, the same curriculum is being used in the kindergarten, ICT, and general education class. When we think about them older, if you're in a 7th grade Horizon classroom, you're getting the same curriculum, the same academic, that work that's at the grade level. So you're getting the 7th grade curriculum. So we're always building on that capacity. The students are just in a smaller class with those accommodations for visuals and for noise and all of those wonderful things. We also have a social curriculum mandate, much like we do in the NEST program. We recognize that our students with autism need support socially. They need to have things highlighted for them. We need to build that competency, like thinking about it. How, if they're fearful of having a conversation, how can we help them? How can we use that language functionally, but also to expand our relationships with others? It's really a wonderful portion of that. And that mandate is supported by the teacher and the paraprofessional, because we push into that class to have that session. So the social curriculum session is delivered inside the classroom with the teacher and the paraprofessional remaining. It gives us the greatest opportunity for generalization. So meaning that the teacher then knows what we're working on and then can support it when the speech therapist is not there. It's a wonderful piece that we think about, that we have the best opportunity there. We have instructional, social, emotional, and behavioral supports for students based on the principles of ABA. Okay, so we are not a discrete trial program. This is a program that adheres to the philosophies of applied behavioral analysis. So meaning that we're thinking, oh, okay, sorry. Thanks, Doris. I will slow down. I know the translators have a hard time. It's an occupational hazard because I am a speech therapist, that I talk a lot, and I'm also a fast talker. Okay, so back to the Horizon, the one in the middle: instructional, social, emotional, and behavioral support for students based upon the principles of applied behavioral analysis. So we use features and philosophies and strategies that come from the fields of ABA. This does not mean that we are sitting one-to-one with a child every day, giving them, you do this, I do that, like a discrete trial training. This is, we're using positive behavioral supports for our students so that we can build that intrinsic, that motivation. I want to do classroom work. Many of our students are very, very motivated to do things they really, really like. So then we have to come into a classroom where they're often tasked with, we need to read, or we need to write, and we want to do math, or we need to do this now, and our students need supports. And what we do is we build in this positive behavioral support. We sometimes will use token systems, meaning our children will get tokens, and then we're building that anticipation so that they are motivated. We also use many of the other things is we break things down, task analysis. We break things down into really, really small steps that are achievable and that we can check it off, and we're motivating so we can get that entire thing done by just following these simple things. We're also using a lot of visuals. Pairing our language with visuals is also another way to do that. Parent counseling and training is also another portion. We want to build that relationship between our families. And in the Horizon program, students are graduating from high school in 4 years with a 97% graduation rate with a Regents diploma. So we're really excited about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's going to talk about the AIMS program.
So our AIMS program is slightly different from Nest and Horizon. It is a K-2 program, so it's only for kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students. And as Kate had said, it's a special class of 6 students only, so it's also a smaller class setting than the other 2 programs. Within the AIMS program, it's supported by a full-time special education teacher, as well as a full-time speech and language pathologist, and we'll talk a little more about that later, and a classroom paraprofessional. So there are 3 full-time staff members in that classroom with only 6 students. It's a very high level of support for our kiddos. Students in the AIMS program have access to grade level curriculum, but it's modified. It meets their needs. These are our students that are earlier learners that perhaps are still working on very basic learning skills, staying in my seat, responding to a question from a teacher, participating in a social exchange back and forth. So we're giving them access to the content, but it is modified to meet their specific needs. Student instruction is primarily an individual, so one-to-one instruction with the teacher, with the speech therapist, with the paraprofessional, or in small groups. We limit the whole group instruction to be very intentional and purposeful for students to bring the skills they learn from small group and one-to-one into that whole group setting. It focuses predominantly on language development and functional communication for our students. So the AIM students may not have the ability to communicate their wants and needs functionally. These may be kids that are dropping to the floor, or they're becoming upset and pushing you away. So we're building up these skills for our students to use their language and say, no, I don't want that, or please give me that cookie, right? There was a priority on focusing on communication, activities of daily living. So entering the classroom, how do I take off my coat? How do I unpack my school bag? How do I get all my materials I need to have my lunch? Really building up, again, those pre-learner skills so that eventually they do have access to their curriculum. The instruction is focused on social, emotional, and behavioral supports, and we use applied behavior analysis in our AIMS program. Again, this is not a discrete trial where kids are sitting one response for a reinforcer. That's not what this program is, but we are using ABA in a very measured and targeted support for our students where they are engaging in one-to-one instruction based on these principles. The classrooms are supported by a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, which is a specialist in human behavior, or a behavior support specialist. They serve that same function. Parent counseling and training is a major component of support for the AIMS program. Again, these are our kids that are learning how to learn in school, so we want to make sure our parents have that conversation. What's working at home? Hey, this is working in school. Have you tried this at home? So it's building up this, again, similar to Nest and Horizon, that communication between families and schools. The AIMS program as of right now is in District, which are in Manhattan, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are in the Bronx, 14, 15, 17, and 20, which are Brooklyn, and then District 75. So we're going to talk about
Thank you. So now we're going to look at the programmatic profiles for the students that are well supported in Nest and Horizon. We're going to start here. All students within our programs need to be eligible for a New York City an educational classification of autism. Many of our families have diagnoses from doctors that state that their child has autism. If you have that documentation and that diagnosis, great. We also want to recognize, nope, not at all. So what we want to do is recognize that some of our families don't have access to a neuropsychologist or to somebody who could diagnose a child with autism. So in New York City Public Schools, to join the Nest, Horizon, or AIMS program, you just need to be eligible for an educational classification of autism. It's not a diagnosis. If you have a diagnosis, we want to look at it. This is about classifying your child's IEP as a child who has autism. It's almost like that window into how would I be able to support this child just by that one word that we're able to think about the things that a child might need who has autism. So that's where that is. So we're going to start with Nest because I think we're going to start here. So we look at all of these, we look at these constructs. So we're looking at a child. Our decision making is really about placing a child into the correct level of support. We want to make sure our children are well supported because if you have autism and we put you in a program that has too much support, you're going to get frustrated because people are all over you and they're not letting you do things that you want to do, or that we're not giving you the support that you need. If you are a child that needs more support than a program, say for instance, you are going to struggle because that's not the correct level of support for you and for your child. So part of what we do in our decision making, it's not all one thing. We're looking at many different aspects here. So we're looking at cognition and intelligence. So that's what your child understands and knows. We're looking at instruction and achievement, and that's like the academic portion. So we have the intelligence piece and that cognition, and then we also look at the academics. And then at the bottom, we're also going to look at language because language is one of the biggest areas of difference for our kids with autism. So we're really looking very specifically at that as well. So language is really important piece. That's why you have a lot of speech pathologists working with children with autism. And I'm just going to quickly show you the next categories we look at is social functioning, because we want to understand socially how it's working for your child, but also behavior, because this is the piece. All children have behavior. We're going to dispel the myths that you can't have behavior and be in one of our programs. All students have behaviors. Students with autism are communicating something to us through their behavior, okay? So we're going to go back into this. So if we're looking at children in the NEST program who are well supported, our students in terms of their IQ, so their intelligent level, it's average to high average. This is a unique profile for students with autism. I've been a speech language pathologist for more than 30 years. This is not a profile we see every day. Most kids with autism have some struggles around that communication piece. When we're looking at students in the NEST program, they have average to high average IQs. And in regard to their academics are on or above grade level. We might see students that are reading at a very high level and they're able to do math at like above where we would see them being able to do that if they were at their grade level peers. They're able to work independently. So these are students that typically follow the directions. They're able to work independently for most of the day. And sometimes they'll be in a small group. They'll need a little bit of support because more of the social piece. It's more about understanding the rules of social or the roles that we each have when we're in a group. Our students in the NEST program also participate in that standard assessment. So meaning you're going to get the same grade level curriculum. And when you get to third grade, you're going to be taking the state tests. You're going to be taking those tests as they go through, all of this ELA and math tests. Our students are doing really well on those. It's also an ability when we go into high school, they're getting that standard curriculum. So they're ready to take that Regents exam when they're in high school. So with kids with, let's go to the language portion with kids in the NEST program. So kids in the NEST program have receptive, which is our understanding of language. So it's our ability to follow directions, understanding that if I see something that this is a water bottle and I can drink out of it. So understanding receptive, following directions is the understanding. We have expressive, which is our ability to communicate verbally. It's also being able to communicate using an augmentative communication device or using language to help us get our thoughts and needs out. Then we look at the other portions of this is the other portion we look at. We have receptive, we have expressive, and then we have social communication and pragmatics. So students in the NEST program have receptive language that's at or above grade level. They have they have expressive language that's at or above grade level. Their primarily biggest area of challenge is around social communication or pragmatics in the NEST program. So meaning that they are students that often gravitate towards adults. These are students that have very, very lengthy and robust communication, like they're talking in full sentences. They are talking a lot. They're able to ask, WH questions like how and why questions when they're little. They are using a lot of vocabulary. So there's oftentimes that we look at this as it's a rarer presentation of autism. Doesn't mean that we never see it, but when we see it, we know it. And their biggest area of challenge is around social. So understanding like the rules of being together. How do I enter a conversation? Can I, watching somebody's face and not understanding that maybe I'm hurting their feelings when I say it like that. That's the areas that we look at. And I think it's really important to understand that. Our overarching goal is to place the child into the correct level of support. And that's something we keep coming back to. So in our decision-making, we're looking at these areas, but then also finding out a lot more. So it's not one of those things. You have a question? Mm-hmm. So when families apply to the programs, and we're going to go through the application process. Yep. Nope. Yeah, I got it. So you're in. You just want to know how we get there. We'll get there. Absolutely. The central team, Molly and myself, and the people that we work with. All right. Nope. I'm here. I like it. Nope, it's okay. So let's talk about that social piece. We talked a little bit about this. This is about not having all the time. It's not easy to be social. It's not easy to take turns. It's not easy to change topics of subject. I only want to talk about this. Well, you can't always. I need to be first, not understanding that other children maybe want to be first. Those are things that we work on, and we really do help throughout the programs. This is something that continues through high school, because social changes as little children are social in kindergarten and first grade. They also need to be social in middle school and high school. How do you get along with folks? Those are things that we think about. Again, behavior. So all children have behavior. Children who have autism have behavior because of a communication need. So they are communicating something to us through their behavior. Language can be really, really challenging for children when they're dysregulated. And when I mean dysregulated, it means I'm not focusing the right way, or my body feels jumpy and I'm unable to, I'm all almost like hyper. And what happens is it's really hard to access your language when you're nervous or anxious. So we often see this piece where our kids will then communicate through their bodies. So we might, some of the things we like to see, what we see is that students that have strict adherence to rules or to structures, like you can't change the schedule, it has to be like this all the time. That can be an area where our children might just freeze or not do something. They'll also say no. And that is okay. We look at our students, they're advocating to us that they need help when they say no to a teacher. So if somebody says we need to do this, whatever, and the child goes, no, we look at that as they need help or they need to have this explained to them. Okay. Yep. We're also thinking children will just freeze. Sometimes they'll drop to the floor. Sometimes they'll push things away. Sometimes they'll escape. They'll just say, I'm leaving because I see the math book coming out and I don't really like math. So I'm just going to leave the area. So those are things that we look at. These behaviors may interfere with learning. And again, we can then figure out what supports we can do to help a child then participate in that so that they're successful. And recognizing that that behavior is a communication. All right. Going to go back to look at Horizon again. So the Horizon again is our 8 to 1 to 1 small class with 8 students that have autism, a special education teacher, and a general education teacher. So when we think about the cognition or the intelligence, students in the Horizon program who are well supported are children who have average to below average and sometimes borderline scores on tests. So we're thinking about that. It's really important that we look at a lot of thinking about our students that one test is not going to define them. We think about, we might see areas of strength in one area and an area of weakness in terms of maybe processing or memory. We often see some issues with. Instruction and achievement, we're looking at our academics are on or near grade level. So these are kids when they're in preschool that are writing some words, they're following some directions. They might not be following every direction independently, but they're following along. They're able to maybe start the backpacking routine. Like if a teacher says to them, okay, we're going to take off our backpacks and then we're going to put it in our cubby. They might just take off their backpack. They might not hear, and then we're putting it on our cubby. So we would then help to support that. So they're fairly independent and they're able to participate in that curriculum. Might not be fully participating, but they're getting there. Question.
There are a lot of things that are here in this program, but he's highly functional.
Good.
So you'll tell him to say, Alex, go put your
Jacket.
Your jacket. Yo, take off your jacket. He knows how to take off a jacket and everything. Put your book there in the cubby. His thing is say please. and you'll say please, and he even if he doesn't want to do it, he's not gonna do it.
Got it? Yes.
So
that rigidity sometimes is really about not following the directions, is like a communication, hey, I need maybe more support, or I just don't want to do it. And that's okay. Or they're little guys and they communicate with us all the time. Moms and dads often have sometimes the most challenges around that because they know you're the best. So they maybe are going to say, and that's part of it, is that they feel most secure with their moms and dads. And what happens is you can refuse with people that love you and are always going to take care of you. Yes.
might be for students that need
Potentially,
feeding,
yeah. So
they're more likely
it can be. So I'm going to go through the profile. So let's go through and listen to this. And thank you for putting that in, because I think it's important for me to highlight all of those things. So these are students like that might, can work independently with some support. We do use those strategies in the principles of ABA here. Like, these are students that need to have that support to complete those tasks that maybe aren't as desired. Those are things that they're not preferred. We'll call that, like, if it's not preferred, means like it's math that maybe a teacher is asking me to do, or sitting in a space that I don't really want to, but I'm going to learn how to, because that's the piece. We need to learn how to be in a classroom. And some of those routines and supports that we put into place in the Horizon program and in the NEST program are things that are going to help to build that ability to be in an academic setting. Okay. So we're thinking about students in the Horizon program. Students in the Horizon program have delays or differences, so meaning that they have receptive understanding delays. So meaning that they might have difficulty understanding all vocabulary or following multi-step directions. They might need more support in understanding concepts. So that's very common. Communication is one of the biggest areas of difference for people with autism. The Horizon profile in regard to language has receptive delays. They also have expressive delays. They are not communicating with the same level that a student in the NEST program is. They are maybe being verbal communicators. They might be using multi-word utterances. They might just be using single words, some phrases, but they have the potential to develop that expressive communication. They also have that social piece, and we're going to get that on the next slide. So we're thinking about this is that we really want to make sure that the language is supported in the Horizon program. And I think it's really important that we understand when kids are dysregulated, that when they are not feeling themselves, or they're like out of sorts and they're feeling like a little out there, they're not going to be able to access their language the same way. So we're going to see differences there. We might see children that are verbal with just a few people and not all. They might only be able to communicate with mom and dad and not communicate in the same way at school. I also want to just highlight here that not every child in the Horizon program or NEST program is a verbal communicator. These are some of our students have an augmentative communication device. Some of them will use an augmentative communication like a computer that helps them to develop their language. It's one of the things that we look at as it's not a disqualifier. So children who have these programs are considered for them. We just want to understand how that child is using that communication device. What are they using? What are they asking for? Are they able to answer questions? Like, are they able to, like when we're reading a story, can they answer questions like about where is the dog? And it would be, oh, it's like under the bed. Maybe like some of that. They're using that communication device to communicate a variety of things. We're thinking about the kids that are coming into kindergarten and they're verbal. They're usually speaking in 2 to 3 word sentences. They might just say single words. They're sometimes echolalia, which is that repeating back, that echoing that we hear. We often see that. And then for when children are coming into the program later, their language is much more developed. So meaning that they're able to answer WH questions, maybe not all of them, but they're communicating verbally. But for our students that have an augmented communication device, our team wants to understand how they're using it. So being like an expert on that augmentative communication device. Okay, then we're going to go over here and think about our Horizon kids, where we're looking at social. Some of our kids have difficulty initiating play. They might be playing next to another child. They might also have difficulty in that interaction where if they're having a conversation, they might say one thing and then they say another, and then the conversation ends. They need a lot of support to have that reciprocal and ongoing conversation. It's one of those things that we look at as being part of that social communication challenges that happen. It often impacts how we play. I'm going to tell everybody that I know students with autism want to have friends. They want to be in the group. Sometimes it's just difficult, and we need to help to support how they come in and be social together and how they're playing. And that can happen when they have good support. So again, we're going to come back to that behavior. Horizon students, because they have more language challenges, like with that receptive, expressive, and social, we're definitely going to see more behavior. And that communication, we're looking at behavior as communication. These are students that might have that repetitive movements, like that stimming, maybe that flapping. They might see that. They're going to have strong interests. They're also going to be self-directed. They might just only want to do something that they want to do. In regard to changes in routine, I'm just going to get through this and I'll answer your question. They might get rigid or freeze. They're like, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to do that. They're going to refuse tasks. They might also just fall to the floor. That's a quick way for us to get our point across is if we fall. We might see students leaving the space when there's a demand placed upon them. They might be kind of pulling themselves away. And these behaviors do interfere sometimes with their participation in an academic classroom. But with the right supports, we can then help them to develop that ability to use their language or to identify other ways for them to communicate their needs. So it's not solely through behavior. So your question?
Okay, so, because my son, he says stuff like, say you know him or whatever, and you walk over, hi Alex, and hey, he looks at you and you won't say hi, he'll go, silly.
Okay.
And you're like, oh, I'm silly? And he just, silly, silly. He says it over and over and over. That's stimming, right?
It could be a vocal stim. I don't know much about the context, so it might be a way for him. He might have heard something that, he's generalizing it too much.
My brother came over to the house,
Uh-huh.
his wife, and she heard him say silly. She was like, oh, silly. And
Maybe he liked the way she did it. Yeah. It's a game. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah. So, but he used it all the time. It doesn't end for no reason. He'll just be like I said, you're welcome.
So he's getting a reaction. So in that communication piece, people when he says silly, they're always probably very animated or they're like, yay. And that, no, yeah. Okay. We'll get, and the part of that is just each child is unique. And we really do look at where they're at to make sure that we're supporting. And that communication piece sometimes can be one where we see a lot of need. And then we put that support in place. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Molly, who's going to talk about the AIMS profile.
So our AIMS students are our earliest learners. To qualify for the AIMS program, just like Nest and Horizon, you need an ED classification of autism. So if you have an autism diagnosis, that's wonderful. The education classification also qualifies students for this, and I think we talk a little bit about that process later. To qualify for the AIMS program, students are either entering kindergarten through the KIP, the kindergarten IEP process, or they're current first graders. That's because our program is only for kindergarten through second graders. So we're prioritizing students that are entering kindergarten or they're entering first grade, so they have multiple years within the AIMS program. In terms of areas of skill and challenges for our AIMS students, these are our earliest learners. They are struggling with pre-academics. They may not know their shapes. They may not know their colors. They may not be able to recognize familiar people like their mom or their dad or their sibling and say their names. Academic skills are also an area of challenge because they don't have these prerequisites, so the academics aren't there yet. They're not able to answer questions about a book that's being read to them or engage in grade level math with their counting or their adding. Language and communication skills are also an area of need. These are students that are either non-speaking or minimally speaking when they enter the program. They are students that would likely require high levels of communication support, which is why that speech therapist is in our AIMS program. They may have a couple words, but they're not used functionally. So they may repeat themselves over and over again, or be able to say the alphabet, but not be able to really apply that information. Our AIMS students are typically engaged in more solitary play and repeated play with toys. They're not necessarily yet able to share space with the peer and share toys with them. They're really working on those early social skills. Behaviorally, like Kate had said, Students are going to drop to the floor if they don't want something. They might push things away. They might get up from the table and walk away from their teacher because they don't want to participate in that work. And that's all connected to their limited ability to communicate with the adults around them. Students in the AIMS program may struggle with self-regulation, which is directly linked to their communication. If I'm feeling this thing inside, I'm really upset. I have a big feeling because I can't tell you what's happening. I'm upset this kid took my toy. I'm upset I don't understand how to do this work. So my reaction might feel much bigger. And our students are going to struggle with that adaptive behavior. Again, following simple routines. They may or may not be able to unpack their school bag. These are kids that probably don't know how to follow all of the steps to use the bathroom or to wash their hands. These are adaptive skills that build out independence. The areas of instruction within the AIMS program, we prioritize that functional communication. And so that's not just speaking like Kate and I are to you. We are building up lots of skills for communication. It might be a student with an augmented communication device, a program where they can click on words that can get their points across. It might be through picture exchanges or teaching students how to gesture and bring someone over to get their needs met. We're building up lots of these skills so that our students can communicate with those around them in their community. Receptive language, we're building up those single step directions. We're going to break down skills. So entering the classroom, okay, take off your school bag. That's a one-step direction. We're going to then build into 2 steps. Hang up your school bag. And we're teaching our students to follow these basic, simple instructions so that as they build these skills, they can have access to more advanced skills. We are teaching students how to identify objects, actions, and people. These are really important. They may not be able to label a water bottle, and then they don't understand that this water bottle is for drinking. They may not be able to label Molly as my teacher. That's a really important skill that I can recognize a familiar person, a safe adult, right? So these are life skills that are critical. Social language, we're building up joint attention. So being able to share materials. I'm going to point over here, look at that. And our AIMS kids are working on that. They don't have that skill developed yet. They're working with the peers and with the adults in the classroom. And then basic imitation skills. So these are our kids that may not clap their hands for happy and you know it. They're kids that may not go along with the wheels on the bus motor imitations. There are kids that are really building out these skills. And again, those daily living, getting dressed and undressed, the basic school ones, using the bathroom and toileting. There's lots of steps involved in toileting, and our students don't have those skills. Going to the bathroom, taking my pants down, taking my underwear down, sitting on the toilet. They're all of these skills that come together that we're teaching explicitly in the AIMS classroom.
So for
beyond.
Mhm.
Same thing with yours. There are things in yours that my son does, and there are things that he's way past. So my question is, it sounds like both programs could help him. Would he be able to be in both, or just?
So not usually. So what
Okay.
we would do is when families apply to the programs, we do a deep dive. We look at all of the information. And if we feel your child can be supported in the program, we tell you which program we think they could be supported in and why. Again, it comes back to we want to place the children in the correct level of support. If you're an AIMS student or you're a student that needs functional communication and language, you need a lot of support there, you're not going to get that level of support in the NEST program, for instance. So the fact is that we're looking to place children and to have them enter classrooms that are ready to support them day one. We want that classroom to be the correct classroom, that instruction to be the right instruction, the team there building the skills that they need, as opposed to them joining a program where the child needs to change for the program. That doesn't work. We know that. We want our children to be in the correct level of support. And okay, so we're going to get through that, and we'll talk about the application process in a minute. But this again is just a high level overview of the NEST program. Again, integrated co-teaching, so it means it has 2 teachers, a general education and a special education teacher. The other portion of this too is that when our children are not in the classroom, there's also folks that are trained there to help support that. So we want to make sure in all of our programs that there are staff that are trained in our programs that might not be teaching them all day. They might just have them for gym, or they might be supporting them at lunch. Those are things that we look at as being an integral part of our programs, is that that we're supporting our children throughout the day, not only and solely in the classroom. And I think that's important to just emphasize. We're going to come back to that pre-service and ongoing professional development. In our programs, we are training the teachers over and over and over again, not about the same topic. We're teaching them additional things, and they become lifelong learners because we want to deepen their understanding of autism and also their practices. So we don't go away, and we say that to our principals when we're talking to them, when they're accepting a program. Our team is here, and in collaboration with NYU for the Nest Support Project, we are there always. It's not like this is a program that we just set up and then we leave. Nope, we work in partnership and collaboration. Really important here. Again, this is an academic program where kids are getting the same grade level curriculum. Many of our Nest students are advanced academically. So there is an opportunity for students to get extension. They might get some enrichment, but also they might need some support in one area like math. So there's some remedial pieces that we can see in the Nest program. Again, social development intervention is that speech mandate that works on that social communication. It's done, the students that are in the Nest program, the 4 students who might be in that kindergarten class, go to the speech language pathologist room to have their social session, but a teacher accompanies them. So we have the general education teacher or the special education teacher goes to help to support that session, because we want to make sure that the teachers can carry over that social in the classroom. The reason why it's a pullout, and I'm going to tell you, is that there are students in the ICT, integrated co-teaching. So we have the Nest students who all have autism, but there are general education students there. When we're working on social, some things for our students can be really challenging and might not be overly explicit, like they're not catching it. So to have a social misstep in front of a child who doesn't have autism is often can be really stigmatizing, and we don't want that to happen. So what we'll do is we're working on social in that safe place where it's the autistic children together with the teacher and the speech pathologist supporting it to help build that skill, and really be protective of it, and then integrate it into the classroom with the general education peers. So that's one thing. It's a safe place, yes. If we think about that, it's like, to have a misstep, because children, you don't know. And yeah, you should know. Like some of the gen ed kids might be like, how do you not know that? He doesn't, and that's okay. We're here, not everybody's going to know the same things, and that we want to be protective of that. Yep, exactly.
Get really bad. Autistic, yeah. That social stuff is really, really important, because regular kids, they don't understand, and it can be really cruel.
They can be. And I think that that's one thing, just from the parent perspective, your children are going out into the world. We want the world to change for our children. And that's what we're thinking about in terms of neurodiversity, thinking about that there's different kinds of, every brain is different and people are all different. And I think it's important, like where we ask the world to change for our children, we also need sometimes to highlight for our children how to be social and who is a safe person to be with. And so those are things that we work on throughout the programs. And we're really mindful about if we're teaching skills, that they're true and right. And so that our children can have, know who to go to advocate for myself if I'm having people picking on me or bullying me. And in our programs, we're very watchful. So meaning like when we're training our teachers, we're on high alert when our kids are in the cafeteria. We want to like see how they're being social, but also doing check-ins with the kids. Like, hey, I see you hanging out with so-and-so. What's going on? And that check-in. So it's that they're there with support, but not interference.
Teach them to have the awareness and the perception to understand these things, so they can protect themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also to say, as children progress through school, to advocate for yourself, like saying, I'm autistic, I need help with this. And most people are going to accommodate that. And if a child is able to, kindergartners, we're certainly not asking them to identify that they are autistic, But this is like as they progress through school, because that's the piece is that we're looking at for them to advocate for themselves and be successful once they come out of one of our programs and then go to college and all of those things. And we work really closely, just to come back to this, we work closely with the NYU Nest Support Project. The Nest program has been around for about 22 years. This is a very, very wonderful program for a very unique child. So I'm just putting it out there. This profile is one we don't see all that often. And when we do see it, we're like, oh, that's a student that could go in the Nest program and be well supported. Okay, let's go to the Horizon program. Again, that 8 to 1 to 1 small class for students that have an educational classification of autism. I'm going to tell you right now, there are students in the Horizon program, they're not all the same, but what they do is they benefit from same or similar supports, okay? So we're going to talk about Dr. Stephen Shore, who's always said, if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, which I think is very true. But we think about the students in the autism programs, like in a Horizon classroom, those are 8 different kids. They might have some of the same need for support and they might have different, but they're all likely going to benefit from visual schedules and having things broken down and having more time to do things or having more experiences with it. So that's where we think about the Horizon program being very successful because we're able to tailor it in this wonderful classroom to break those things down so that we get the successes. We're looking again that they're getting the grade level curricula, like meaning that they're getting the same academics that's happening in the gen ed classroom. And that happens throughout the program. Really important. Again, that we're looking at those people everybody working in the program has that pre-service training. It's not like you can just say, hey, I'm in the Horizon program and I'm going to do it like this. No, we do it like this. And the expectation of supporting our families and our children and doing it in a proactive and positive way. So we really are there to help support it. We think about our Horizon coaches. We have instructional coaches that come from the central team that go in and model and support and coach alongside those teachers. They get a high level of support because our students in the Horizon program have sometimes more communication challenges. They might be having behavior because they have a difficult time communicating what they want or need. So we look at our coaches as coming in and providing like on-site elbow to elbow coaching, like I'm going to show you how to do it, or can we try it like this? So that's a very, very big part of our program. We have that social curriculum. In this instance, the social curriculum is different because we have 8 students who all have autism. So they are in one class. That's why it's a push-in instead of a pull-out. We're going to work to support the speech pathologist is going to come in, work on social with this group, building those concepts with the teacher and the para remaining so that we can then generalize it. How do we make connections with each other? Like thinking about that, like, hey, you're a Lego kid. I'm a Magnetiles kid. Like, oh, wait, can we put those things together and think about how do we work together? Those can be wonderful little things. Yep. It's fun, right? And we use Rethink Ed as a program partner. They do professional development and also other things for our team, which is lovely. And it's a nice partnership. Okay, let's move it right along to the Ames classroom.
So the Ames classroom, as we had mentioned, is a 6-student classroom. The structure of the classroom is very intentional. It follows a model called structured teaching. And so that focuses on the physical structure of the classroom where every part of the room makes sense. There's my group instruction for morning meeting. There's a small table for my one-to-one with speech. There are tables in the back for me to work independently. There's an area designated for my food items to go. So students are able to navigate that safely. Every student in the Ames program also has an individualized schedule that guides them throughout their day of what activities they're doing. So students are checking, oh, I have speech, and then after speech, I'm going to go to work with my classroom teacher, and then I'm going to go to workstation. And so it provides a high level of support and predictability for the Ames kiddos. There's also independent workstations, and these really focus on skills our kids have learned already to maintain those skills. We want to make sure that things that we've taught, our kids are able to do continuously and repeatedly, and so that's why an independent workstation exists. The Ames classroom uses an assessment called the ABLES, the Assessment for Basic Language and Learning Skills, and that assesses early developmental skills, and it identifies areas of need for our Ames students. This is done 3 times a year and guides our teachers in identifying what to focus on for each individualized student in the classroom. It's highly individualized instruction, and that's why students are participating mostly in one-to-one and small group, because it's aligned to this ABLS assessment. We will also want to make sure that our teachers are teaching across environments. So if I'm teaching my kids to work at this table with me, I want to make sure they can do it at the carpet during morning meeting. And I want to make sure that they can do this in the cafeteria during lunchtime. We want our students to be successful across multiple environments. Instruction primarily focuses on applied behavior analysis, that study of human behavior, with a focus on verbal behavior, because our kids don't have these developed language skills. So verbal behavior really teaches kids how to request, how to label items in their environment, how to interact in back and forth social interactions with people, how to build up language and repeat what someone says to me so I can learn that word myself. The instruction is focused on that one-to-one and that small group, with very, very specific whole group instruction to make sure they're using the skills they've gained in these one-to-one small group in group instruction. The Ames classroom is a collaborative model. So there's that full-time special education teacher. There's the full-time speech and language pathologist. We want them to collaborate all day. That classroom parrot is a collaborative member of this team. The OT, the PT, all of those other related service providers are communicating together as a team, as well as the support of the behavior support specialist and the school administration. So the Ames school day, students are rotating through different modalities of instruction, that one-to-one and that small group, approximately 30 minutes by the end of kindergarten. We're not starting at 30 minutes in the beginning of the year. We're starting at about 10, because we are building up that sustained attention. Our goal by the end of kindergarten is our 30 minutes. These instructional models are one-to-one with my classroom teacher, building skills. The one-to-one instruction, or a small group, a dyad, a group of 2 with my speech teacher. OT is one-to-one or small group based on students' IEPs. They're engaging in small group and one-to-one instruction with the classroom paraprofessional as well. We're implementing the structured teaching throughout the day, our environment set up. Kids are checking their schedules. Then they know who they're working with and what skills they're working on. We minimize our whole group instruction, again, to stuff that our kids are able to do. A short morning meeting, a short read aloud, lunch and snack, just making sure that it's meaningful for our students. Within the Ames program, every Ames student has 5 individual speech sessions in the classroom. So every single day they get speech for 30 minutes. And then there's a small group of 2, so they are partnered with the classmate to be able to use those skills with someone else. All other related services are recommended through that IEP process. So what are our kids working on specifically in Ames? I keep coming back to our functional communication. We want our Ames kids to build up our language skills, because that's really a gateway to be able to advocate for ourselves. We're teaching through vocal language, talking, gestures, sign language, devices. We just want our kids to communicate. We are doing a total communication approach so that our students are building this skill up. We're focusing on receptive language, such as following directions. That's a life skill. It's an independent and adaptive skill. We need our kids to be able to follow instruction for safety purposes. We're identifying objects, actions, and people, because that's how we build up our language and social communication. And then again, with social, we're building on joint attention, being able to interact collaboratively with an adult first and then with our peers, and be able to then build that into play and games. The skills that are built on in the Ames classroom are both a combination of physical imitation, like I had said, yells on the bus or Happen You Know It, and vocal imitation. So that builds on prerequisite skills for foundations and for Haggerty. If I can repeat what my teacher says, I can build in those phonics skills. Pre-academics are worked on: matching, sorting, labeling, imitation, and these pre-academics lead to those academic skills. If I can match 2 letter A's, and then I can learn that the letter A looks like this, I can then build this academic component. And then building an understanding of concepts and identifying those letters and numbers. Lastly, our activities of daily living. We are focusing on supporting our kids to build the highest level of independence they can. We want our students to be able to use the bathroom independently. We want our students to be able to open their food items independently, enter the classroom and not require someone to do it for them. We want our students to be able to have autonomy over their actions.
Thanks, Molly. So one of the things that we're often going to look at within any of our programs, Nest Horizon or Ames, is really like looking at that classroom. They all look a little different, but there's components that are really fluid within the programs, and that they're in each one in a different way. We're going to really look at this as a therapeutic environment. Like, we're looking at students in the ways of making accommodations for the classroom means that we might use visuals, like putting up a schedule helps everybody. That's a way to ground and connect children to what is happening. You're also getting that language piece, like, and I also can make predictions like, hey, we're going to transition. We only have 10 more minutes, but then after that, we're going to gym, which is your favorite thing, or we are going to have lunch. So we're able to kind of build in those capacities because we're using visuals paired with the language. Those are really, really important things. We're also going to think about that classroom, how bright it is, how loud it can be. Are there ways that we can make simple accommodations, which would be like literally having the tennis balls in the bottom of the chairs? We could also have noise canceling headphones for some of our students that might need that when they go on the fire drill. Understanding that we also might have some place for sensory regulation, where we look at the top right of your screen as the sensory regulation supports. In each one of the Nest and Horizon classrooms, there is a designated area where children are learning to regulate their bodies. So part of that is, it's not just a place where I can go and have a lot of fidgets. I'm actually going in there to learn and recognize, number one, my body is, I'm dysregulated. I feel jumpy. What the language we might be using with a little child, like, would be, I feel dysregulated. It doesn't maybe make that connection. So we might have the teacher explain how they feel. I'm seeing that you might feel a little jumpy or distracted. When I feel like that, I go to the quiet corner and I do 10 deep breaths. I play with Play-Doh, whatever their routine is, but we're teaching children the language first to identify and then what to do. So that's really about building that independence in the sense that we can recognize and use that as a life skill. Having the ability as an adult to stand up and take a walk, wonderful. Kids can't do that all day at school. Like, we can recognize as adults that we can maybe delay our regulation or delay our sensory. Our little guys are in a classroom sometimes for a long periods of time, and they might need additional supports. The one thing I want to call out about the sensory corner is in the Nest classroom, that's for everybody. That's not just for the Nest kids. We're not going to say, well, only Nest kids can come in here. It's for the entire class. So the entire class is getting that support. Again, the adaptive seating, that's one thing that we're seeing. We have children standing. We have children that have bicycles, like bicycle desks. The things that we're looking at is accommodations to help our children learn. A lot of that can just be by simple modifications. Again, thinking about what that looks like and making those accommodations. But these are like hallmarks of our programs. One thing we like to talk about a lot is that once we have like an autism program, school, Nest, Horizon, or Ames, a lot of these supports start going into the other classrooms. So meaning, like, we have a voice scale, and those are things that, it's an abstract thing. Slow down. That voice scale would be something that we might see in all of the classrooms. Things that we could see that would help to build understanding for everyone. Okay.
Proper way that our kids are looking for, and I see all the programs, and I'm like, well, I want to do that. Why didn't they do that for me?
Well, we know better now. And the supports that we often have in the Nest and Horizon programs are really about helping everybody. Like, these are things that are not specific tools to help support autistic kids. They usually help everyone. So we often have that ability, and then we know more now. So classrooms are looking different than when I went to school, where we sat in desks in rows.
They can better do that. I don't feel bad about being jealous of my son.
I like that. Okay. So this is why we're all here today, to talk about the application process. Yay. Okay. So the one thing that we'd like to do is really talk about families are able to apply to the programs. You don't need to work with an IEP team. We do suggest that you work with your child's school. If you're in kindergarten, the kindergarten IEP process starts for children who were born in 2021. So we're going to call them the KIP kids. Those are children who are going to go to kindergarten in September of 2026, this September. Families are going to be working with their IEP teams. They call them the KIP teams. They'll be reaching out to you soon to make determinations on what kind of services or special education programs your child needs next year. This is a collaborative process. Families apply to the programs for kindergarten. They might have applied already. You might apply today. You might apply soon. I'm going to tell you, if you're thinking about your child's coming into one of our programs for kindergarten, get that application in. When you're talking to your team, you're going to want to talk about your child's present level of performance. Like, what are they doing? Like, understand what that looks like. Is this something that needs support? Not every child needs to come into a specialized autism program. Some children, a lot of children do really well outside of our programs. We have many kids come in middle school and high school, which means that they were getting the correct level of support in elementary. That they decided at a different time that they were coming into a more supported program. But New York City Public Schools does an amazing job of supporting autistic children in non-specialized programs. So I think that's really important. Again, you're going to consider your present level of performance. Like, are they making progress? Are we looking at how are they doing functionally? Are they able to follow directions? Are they able to participate in some of those routines of daily living? I think that's a really important thing. Are they able to assist with putting their shirt on? They might not be able to do it all the way, but are they able to do some of that? Again, you're going to think about those communication skills. And we're thinking about our children. Are they able to understand language? Are they able to express themselves? And if they are, how? Is it solely through facial expressions or by moving people and bringing them to things? Or do I have the ability to communicate that verbally? Or do I use a communication device? Those are all things that we're looking at and considering. Again, we're going to think about this conversation that's going to happen between you and the IEP team is really about exploring options for your child that might be the right level of support for them next year. Okay, so you're going to submit an application. So we have 2 applications. There's online applications for both. The Nest and Horizon is one application, and then we have an online application for the AIMS program. Okay, so you can find these applications on the specialized programs page of New York City Public Schools. Doris, anybody who is not here right now, is going to be getting the links to all of these pages. We're going to share the links directly for the applications for the autism programs, Nest and Horizon, and then for the AIMS program. So those are all both online, so it makes it easier. If you have difficulty filling out that application, you can reach out directly to the autism programs team, and we will help you put that application in. We'll submit it on your behalf. You can also ask your kindergarten IEP team to submit it. I'm going to tell you, I think it's really important if you're a incoming kindergarten family, that you're telling them you're interested in an autism program, that you're telling them, hey, I've applied. This is a level of support I want my child to be considered for. And that relationship then starts to build where we think of different possibilities for children. So applications can be submitted at any time. So you can apply in kindergarten, you can apply if you're in 11th grade. We accept applications all the time. And part of what we do is our team will review to see if your child could benefit from one of the programs. You have a question?
Do I apply for both until after once I finish program, that's when I figure out?
So part of what we're doing with the application process means that you're letting us know that you're interested for your child to join one of those programs. We'll work with your IEP team to secure all of the testing required. You can apply for both. We'll have a discussion after this. So families might apply for the AIMS program and the Horizon program. So they might submit 2 applications. Again, if you apply to one and our team feels that another program might be the right level of support, we communicate that with each other because we want to make sure, because it's a lot. Again, we want our goal is for the child to be in the right level of support. The one thing I'm going to tell you is that you are all entitled to new assessments. We like to have assessments as close to the date, like as this kindergarten IEP process starts. And I'm going to tell you why. If you get your testing now, we're going to be able to capture all of the progress your child's made in this last year. So we really want to make sure that we're getting the best level of information right now. So we work really closely with the IEP teams about getting that testing. Remember, we talked about the IQ testing. We want to get that information. We want to make sure that that is done for you. If you need an autism measure, we're going to ask for that. You do not need to have any of these things. You can certainly go if you have an appointment with a neuropsychologist or another organization. We are not going to tell you not to go to those. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that everything to get into a Nest or Horizon program all the testing and assessments can be done through your IEP team. So you do not need to go out to get a private evaluation. You're certainly entitled to, and that we're not going to discourage you from. But I want to just let you know that everything for our programs in terms of assessments can be done through your local, your KIP team or your IEP team at your child's current school. Okay. All right, good. Again, so when you apply to the program, our team, the Central Autism team, what we do is we review that information. We're going to look at your child's information. We're going to look at progress reports. We're going to do a deep dive. I'm like, when I say we're detectives, we are detectives. Like, we're looking at everything. We're going to ask for evaluations if we think we need them. We're going to work with the IEP team to make sure that they are doing the testing we need to make a determination for Nest and Horizon. We're going to ask for specific things for the AIMS program. We might need to have an adaptive measure. Those are things that we're going to ask for. And also, we work very closely with all of the kindergarten, all of the IEP teams across New York City public schools. They know how to apply to the programs. We have lots of professional development around this. Again, we are going to help you through this process. Again, if you want to go out and get private testing, great. I'm going to suggest that everything and tell you that everything can be done through your current school's IEP team or with the KIP team, the kindergarten IEP team that's working with the families that have children born in 2021. Okay. So we do that clinical review. We're going to identify what we think your child could benefit from, and that is through conversations, reading speech reports, talking to teachers, talking to you. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll find out much more information, because I'm going to tell you, children with autism oftentimes do not test well. They might have been pulled for testing and they didn't perform the way they might have performed for mom and dad or with somebody who's familiar to them. We see that a lot. We have children that have performed one way on a test, and then when we go out to see them, we see all of the things that they're doing well. And then we're like, wait, this isn't matching up, but now we know why. There's a testing issue here. It doesn't mean that we need to get new testing. We've just confirmed what that child needs by doing an observation. So that's another portion of our program, is we're making that determination. So we're looking at all of that information and looking at everything, talking to folks, because our goal, and I keep saying this, is to place your child in a program that has the correct level of support, if it's appropriate. We want to make sure that they're coming in. Again, we're going to do an observation to confirm, and that's really to understand what levels of support your child is getting currently. Many times we go to preschools and we're like, wait, he's a Lego kid, and that teacher had such a wonderful routine and was giving the support to that. And you get a sense of who that child is and how then the team who's accepting him or her for September already has this window into, wait, when we did the observation, these are things that were working for him. These are things sometimes that weren't working. Not every child is coming from the same supported preschool. There are times that we go out and see children and then we're like, wait, there's not a lot of autism support here. So then we might look at it and say, when we go out to do the observation, we're like, we need to put different supports in place so that they're successful in September, because the child is not getting the correct level of support where they're at. And that is oftentimes what we see, but we often see times where we see this amazing thing happening in their preschool, and we're like, we can use that when they come into our programs. And that they think is really important. Again, if your child is eligible, you're going to be in communication. Our team is in communication with families to let them know that we would like to offer a place for your child in one of our programs for the next school year or for that time. And again, we're really, really looking at placing children as close to home as possible, because placement is a big deal here. So again, it's a placement. Our goal is to place the children in schools that are close to home for a variety of reasons. We want our children to feel connected to the community, sometimes when you're not on a bus for hours and hours and hours, we want to minimize that travel time. We also want you to have the ability to participate, we'll get there, participate in after-school programs and those things that when your school is 11 miles away, you don't always have the same access. Like, and having a one of these programs close to your home is our goal. So if you're a resident in Queens, we're going to be looking for programs and your child is eligible, the closest one to your home that has availability. Again, the other piece that we look at is that families are invited into the programs once they've been accepted. This can be a little, all of our families are very nervous. They all want to see a program in action. And the one thing that we look at and what we talk about is that our families are invited into the program once you've been accepted. I know that that doesn't feel great. You're getting an overview of what each one of the programs looks like. And because there's fidelity to the model, the schools are all doing the same thing, regardless of the location. So what happens in Staten Island is happening in the Bronx. What happens in Brooklyn is happening in Manhattan. We are working at a program that has fidelity. So there are things that need to be done in a program. They're not saying I'm only doing this portion and not that portion. Every one of the programs has the same levels of support and the same expectations. So we invite families into the program once they've been accepted. The reason for that is because we're very, very, very mindful of tours. So if you're at Horizon Classroom, thinking about it, having families come in for tours or people coming in for tours to look at a Horizon Classroom when there's a central application and placement process doesn't mean or guarantee that your child is going to that program. The piece is that 8 students in that classroom for Horizon are there to learn. Tours are disruptive. When families come in, we can say that, and I've said that to families. I can guarantee that the only folks that are coming in to visit a program are folks that are now families that have been accepted to the program. It's very reassuring understanding that we are protective of the programs because there's a central application and placement process, but most importantly is because the tours are disruptive. And this process is really one that we want to be protective of our children because they have an educational classification of autism, and we want to be mindful of that. Again, if kids come into the program, we're going to work to update a school location letter and a placement letter for your child, but also give your information so you can find out about that program. Find out, you get to meet with the team. If you're admitted to a program, you get to understand more. You don't have to make the determination. Like somebody from our team will say, hey, we think your child can be supported in this program. Please go visit. We're giving you the contact information, like we're introducing you to the school. Go and visit, and then let us know if you're accepting the seat. Just because you've been accepted to the seat does not mean that we're going to just place your child into the program. Families get to visit, they get to feel, they get to smell, they get to, make that connection, and then determine if they're coming in. And that would be the registration process. Again, students in the programs, our goal is to place them as close to home as possible. Some of our school kids are blocks away from their school. They live a couple blocks away. Do they need to have a school bus to take them a few blocks? Maybe, maybe not. Our goal here is that students who are in the program are eligible for busing and can use that to get to school and to come home. All right. So those are things that we look at. Busing is one of the areas that we have. They're routing many, many children across New York City public schools. New routes take 7 to 10 days to become effective. So there's times that we see in programs or in certain times of the year in certain boroughs that we might have some delays in busing. We understand the impact that has on families. New York City public schools is totally, we want to acknowledge that, but also support the process. But I also like to be really mindful that it does take 7 to 10 days for a bus route to be established. So when a child comes in at the beginning of the year, that first few days, you might not have a bus route set up. But once it's set up, it's usually very consistent. And those are things that we look at. Again, going to the next page, just again, yeah. And
correct that my kid, he likes to eat them.
Okay,
So I would just like, that was, I might watch him or see him when he gets off so that
Uh-huh.
he doesn't go over there when he's supposed to be over here. You know, something like that. Do you guys have that?
so there's mechanisms. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is when you're working with your IEP team, you should share those concerns. Specialized transportation can look different for each grade of children and each child. If it's a small bus, there's always a matron. So there is, we have protocols within our buildings, like that there is a busing protocol. Like our children get off the bus and are received by that team, meaning that there's Horizon staff who are there to get the children off the bus so that we don't have the opportunity for somebody to, we don't want that. And also it's the consistency. I get to see the same person, when I'm on the bus. So there's also times that we make accommodations for the bus. Some of our children need headphones on the bus, or they need a schedule on the bus. They also might need to have something to do while they're waiting. And those are things that our teams are very, very skilled at, in identifying when children need additional supports on the bus. Most of our kids are, I would say almost all of our kids are doing amazingly well on a bus with just the matron. And, and when there are instances where there's additional levels of support that need to be put in place, we would want to make sure before all that happens that we put in the proactive supports before it gets to a point when we need to have additional people on a bus. That makes sense. That I think is really important. Again, so when we're thinking about placements, we're always going to place children as close to home as possible. That is, one of the things that we want our kids to have the ability to be part of the community, for families to have quick access to get there, so that you also can attend meetings and be part of the after-school program. Those are always the things that we look at. Many times when families apply in upper grade, so meaning that you're applying in third grade, and that's okay. We accept applications at any time. So if you're applying for an upper grade, we might not have a vacancy. We might not have an available seat that's in the program that's closest to your home. It might be in a program that's 2 miles further away. The piece is that those are things that happen. Again, our biggest articulation point is at kindergarten. Families can apply at any point. If we're able to give a vacancy, like if there's a seat available in third grade in a Horizon program, we're going to fill that seat. So a child who might have applied, and then we would want to make sure that they get that seat. It might not be the closest Horizon program, but it's the closest one that has a seat available. Again, it's really around making sure our kids are getting the correct level of support. You're going to be offered that tour after you've been accepted to the programs, because we're really just protective of disruptions to instruction around tours, like big tours of all kindergarten families coming in to see a program. No, we want to be protective of that. A Horizon school might say we have a Horizon program, but they're not bringing in their kindergarten families who are not in the program to visit that classroom. So we're really mindful about that. Again, you do not have to accept a seat. There are many times families go through this process and they're like, hey, we think our child is going to be successful in a different placement. You can always decline. If, the need comes back that you want to reapply, we encourage you to reapply. But also, I think the piece is that you're working with your kindergarten IEP team to create an app, or your IEP team to give the levels of support your child needs through the IEP. If you decline a seat, the IEP that you currently have will be used to help support your child in their current school, or you'll work with that IEP team to make a different or alternative placement recommendation. Again, once the children are in the programs for Nest and Horizon, so students come in kindergarten, they will progress through. When they get to 5th grade, they'll have the ability to rank a Nest or Horizon middle school or high school in 5th and 8th grade. They have the ability to remain in the program with the levels of support that have been consistent. They can also opt to go to a less restrictive or go to an art school. We don't always see students staying in the programs all the way through high school. Many of our students go to specialized high schools. They might go for academics. They might go for art, music, acting, like we have performing arts. We want our students to have the options to be in those, in any program that they think that they could best be supported. Because when children are happy and they're in a great place, they're going to thrive. So if they really want to go to a fashion high school, go for it. That I think is going to be really wonderful. We want our children to be happy, but they also have the opportunity to remain in the program through this articulation process where you get to rank middle schools and high schools that have the Nest and Horizon program. And again, if you're applying for the first time when you're entering 5th grade or 8th grade, so if you're applying for middle school right now and high school, and I don't know that anybody here has that, what you're going to do is you have to go through the middle school and high school online application process. You submit an application. Our team will work on those applications once we've identified where our middle school and high school seats are located. Again, that's really important to think about. If you have a 5th grader or an 8th grader, you need to go through the online application process so you can secure a seat. And our application for middle school and high school runs alongside it, and determinations are made where our vacancies are identified. Okay? Kids do come in for middle school, and I always say, please apply, because we have seats many times. Like oftentimes we might have families that are saying, hey, we are moving out of New York City, sadly, or my son is really interested in going to a computer high school. And then we have a seat. So, I always say apply and go through the process. Okay. All right. And then, so we have some useful resources and contact information. Again, the applications, we can go to New York City Public Schools Specialized Programs page. Doris is going to share this with everybody. There are 2 applications. There's lots of information on the Specialized Programs page. You're going to hear about Nest and Horizon and AIMS, but also about the ACES program, the iRead, and the PATH program. So it's really important. There's lots of information on that Specialized Programs page. We also find out about bilingual special education on that Specialized Programs page. And again, we work on the specialized programs are not for every student, and you are working with your IEP team. And if you're applying to one of our programs to determine if this could be a good level of support for your child. Again, the application process is supported. We want to make sure that we're hearing from our families, but also that there's questions that come up. And it's a process that can feel very lengthy and overwhelming. We're hopeful that you feel connected. Our clinicians will be reaching out if you've applied for kindergarten, introducing themselves, having you then introduce them to the KIP team that you're working with so that we have this fluid communication. I'm going to tell you, we get a lot of applications. They're working diligently. Part of it is that many times applications or questions are better through email, and because they get a lot of phone calls a day, so they might not be calling you back because they're answering emails. So I'm going to tell you that's usually the preferred mechanism. Is if you're working with a borough team, use the email piece. If you have general questions about this, you can email the Autism Programs inbox. That's on the next page. And there we go. So we're right here, the Autism AIMS, Nest, and Horizon, and all questions can come to the Autism Programs at schools.nyc.gov. That special QR code, very fancy, it brings you right to the Specialized Programs page. And you can find out more about our specialized programs. Today, we focused primarily on Nest, Horizon, and AIMS. 3 of our specialized autism, our 3 specialized autism programs. And we're here to answer some questions, and thank you for your time.
All righty. So thank you, ladies. We're going to first take the questions from those that are attending virtually via Zoom, and then we will connect to those that are here in person. So for those who join us via Facebook, thank you for attending, and I hope that you enjoy such an informative presentation.